But let me back up and talk about my personal journey with caregiving. As Becky mentioned, I grew up in a family of sickness. My father died when I was 6 of brain cancer, and my mom was his caregiver. She had 2 kids and a sick, dying husband, and she managed to juggle it all. She got us off to school, she took care of him. Nobody used the word caregiver. This was the 1950s. Not only did they not use the word caregiver, but they didn't talk about illness. They certainly didn't use the C word, and they certainly didn't do any of it around children. So for me, illness was this dark and mysterious, scary place, and I didn't really want anything to do with it. My mother was also someone who didn't talk to her friends about problems. She thought it all smacked of complaining. So she was very stoic, which is something I admire, but to her detriment, it took a toll on her because she had nobody to share with at all. When I was 9, she remarried my stepfather, who was a wonderful man. He had 4 kids. We were 2. We were 6 altogether, 6 kids in this blended family that was not always so blended. And he had epilepsy and ultimately got very sick from complications. And there was my mother, again, doing her wifely duties, not caregiving, wifely duties, and lovingly taking care of him. So I actually came away from this thinking, okay, fine for her, fine for Mom, I admire her, not for me. Oh no. Some people marry for love, some people marry for money. I'm going to marry for health. I'm going to get a guy who's going to stick around. And then I fell in love with Michael. And so the joke was sort of on me, because we can't plan these things. The heart wants what it wants. I fell madly in love with him, and he was this architectural photographer, an avid sailor, vigorous outdoorsy, the picture of health. I actually said to somebody, I got a live one. Over dinner one night, he said, casually, I have something called Crohn's disease. And I said, Mom, I don't know what that is. You look fine to me. He said, well, it's an autoimmune digestive thing, and I'm in remission. So denial is a beautiful thing. Caregivers do a lot of it. And I just dismissed it. I paid no attention, and we went on with our passionate romance, and we scheduled our wedding. And a few weeks before the wedding was the first trip to the ER. And it was my wake-up call. I thought, oh, this is not no big deal. It seems I'm going to be a caregiver. And it really was a wake-up call, because at that point, Michael let me know that he had been diagnosed at age 11, that he'd had about 100 hospitalizations, 30 or so surgeries for resections and complications and all sorts of things, and that, as we joke, he spends more time at the doctor than most people spend at Starbucks. How did I get good at this thing? How did I learn to be a caregiver? Well, what do writers do? We write books. So I thought, well, I'm going to just take a detour from all those romantic comedies, and I'm going to go out in the field, and I'm going to find out, how do you be a good caregiver? And I wrote this book called You Better Not Die or I'll Kill You, and people people chuckle when they hear the title. But those are literally the words that I say to Michael every time he's about to go into surgery. You know how they wheel a patient on the gurney to the OR, and there are those scary-looking double doors, and that's where the nurse says, this is where you have to say your goodbyes. And I would lean down and wag my finger at Michael and say, you better not die or I'll kill you, because I'm not going on Match.com, and I'm not doing any of that. And he would laugh, and off he'd go. And I always thought, you know what, that's better sending him off with a smile than it is having him see me, cry or wring my hands. And so that's where the title came from. But it also sets the tone for the kind of caregiver book I wanted to write. You know, there are so many wonderful caregiver books out there, but I'm going to be honest, some of them are depressing, and I did not want mine to be a Debbie Downer. I just did not. I wanted to take a humorous look at caregiving where possible. Now, there's a lot about caregiving that is not funny. It is not funny to see someone you love in pain. It is not funny to pick up the phone and get a bad diagnosis from a doctor. It is not funny to watch someone you love die. But when there's an opportunity for funny, you gotta grab it. And Becky mentioned silver linings. I wanted to uplift. I wanted to show that there can be silver linings even where you wouldn't think to look. For an example, my mom is now 96. She lives in New York, I live in California, so I'm a long-distance caregiver, but my sister is back in New York, and Mom is in great physical shape, but her memory, not so much. Now, her older sister just turned 99 a week ago, and they had a very same thing. My aunt is in good physical shape, memory not good. So they've had a rocky relationship as sisters. They have gone for periods of time without speaking. Nobody quite knows why. Somebody says something that puts somebody off. So they had gone for 10 years without speaking until a year ago. One day, Mom picked up the phone and called my aunt, and they started chatting, and now they have sleepovers and, you know, have lunch together. And so here's the silver lining. Dementia makes you forget that you were mad at your sister. It's a, you know, okay, it's a positive. So what did I learn? I learned a lot. I learned once, since I started off this conversation about the ER, I learned about the ER. I interviewed an ER doc in Atlanta. And you know, knowledge is power for caregivers. When we know what's going on within the medical system, we're less stressed. We feel like we can handle. So I mean, I didn't know what the triage system was. I never did understand why some patients got seen before others. Now I understand about level 1, level 2, and all of that. And so she taught me about that. She taught me about what goes on when you're supposed to ask your questions, when the doctor is doing the workup. The best tip she gave me was something that I have now called nagging wives save lives. And the reason I call it that is because she said, tell caregivers, never let a man go to a hospital or a doctor without a woman alone. Now, apologies to men in this room, but you know how you guys sometimes don't like to, you know, ask for directions? Well, the same is true with giving a complete medical history. Sometimes men aren't as forthcoming about their medical histories as women. For example, this ER doc gave me a story of a young man who came to the ER in anaphylactic shock. You know, his throat had closed up. And after she stabilized him, she said, so, has this ever happened to you before? No. No sense of choking? No. Ever get a rash? No. You allergic to anything? No. Are you sure? Yes. An hour later, his mother came there and said, I can't believe he's here. He was in another hospital a week ago with the exact same thing. So never let a man go. Always have a sister, a daughter, a mom, a wife, somebody.